back, mathematicians. So we are going over real-world linear equations. So that is relationships in real life that have a linear relationship. Let's dive right into the first example. So the swimming pool, when full, holds a certain amount of water. When the drain is opened, the amount of water in the pool drains out at a constant rate. The graph shows the amount of water in Y gallons in the pool X hours after the drain is opened. And the question we're being asked is to find the vertical intercept of the graph and explain what information it gives about the situation. So the vertical intercept is also the y-intercept in this case, because it says right there that the variable is y. Let's show that in blue. Okay, so we're looking for the y-intercept. And explain what it means about the situation. Okay, so the y-intercept occurs at 648,000. So we're going to put b equals 648,000. Now, what does that mean? Well, we're talking about time, and then we're talking about the amount of water. So this point here is the one we're talking about. At 0, 648,000. Right, that's our point, that's our vertical intercept when x is 0. So that means at 0 hours, so at 0 hours, and what's more appropriate to say is at the start. Okay, there was 648,000 gallons of water. So we're using our x and y variables, what they represent, in order to say what the numbers we're finding represent. Okay, so in this case, I'm using the fact that I know x is 0 when the vertical intercept occurs, and I know the vertical intercept number is 648,000. Right. The next question is to find the slope of the graph and explain what information it gives about the situation. So let's see, we have 2 points they give us. We've got 0 and 648,000. And then they give us one other point, and that's 200 and 248,000. Notice I'm not putting any commas into my thousands, because then it looks like I actually have a coordinate with 3 points, and you don't actually use those until calculus B or C, okay, when you talk about three-dimensional graphs. So instead of x and y, you would have x, y, and z. So we don't want to show that. But in order to say what the slope represents, we have to find the slope between these two lines. These 2 points. So let's label our x1 and our y1, and then x2 and y2. And then I know my slope formula is m equals y2 minus y1 over x2 minus x1. And I'm just filling in those numbers now. So I've got 248,000 minus 648,000 over 200 minus 0. And so I'm taking away on top, I'm taking away a larger number than what I have. So this is going to be negative 400,000. over 200. And I simplify that, I can get rid of these zeros. So I have 4,000 over 2. And divide that by 2, it's 2,000. So my slope I know is 2,000. And it's negative 2,000. So what that tells me about the graph here is that for every hour, for every 1 hour, it's going down 2,000 gallons. Okay, so when you're talking about slope, we're going to use kind of this particular phrase. It's for every, and then we say the change in x. In this case, it was 1 hour. It goes, and then we're going to say the change in y. In this case, it goes down 2,000 gallons. So that would be my sentence. And so you can use that kind of explanation for slope throughout all of these type of problems. You just fill in for your x variable and your y variable. This problem here is an on your own problem. For this example, we're comparing the two different linear relationships from their graphs. So we have two different people. We have Joanne and Chris. They're each salespeople. Each of them earns a fixed monthly salary. They also earn an additional percent of the amount in dollars that they sell that month. So the total monthly amount, which is Y dollars, each salesperson earns depends on how much in X dollars he or she sells. So this is really common in sales, or even you can think about being a waiter or waitress. Right? You're going to get a lower monthly salary because they want you to earn what's called a commission, and that's like a percent of the money of what you're selling. So for a waiter or waitress, that would be like their tip. If they're provide good service, they would earn a tip, and that kind of goes towards how much they earned that month. So if you're not a very good salesperson, you're not going to earn a lot of money past your fixed monthly income. So that fixed monthly salary that they're talking about, that is if you sell nothing. They have to give you some sort of minimum amount. So in this case, if they sell nothing, that's the same thing as the vertical intercept. Okay, so that means that Joanne makes $2,500, $2,500, and that Chris makes $1,500. Right? That's if they don't earn anything. And next step, the next question, both Joanne and Chris earn a percent commission. Who earns a greater commission rate? So when you talk about rate, immediately you want to think about slope, because slope is the rate of change. So how much is this graph changing over time, right? And it changes depending on how much they sell, right? And our graph shows that because it shows sales in thousands of dollars. It looks like we could count on this one. Let's kind of pretend we could here. So go up 1, 2, which is really going up 500. I'm sorry, 250, 500, and then over 1/2, 1, 1.5, 2, 2.5. But you want to be careful because these grid marks are so big. You can even see that they actually put in this little squiggly mark to show that it doesn't go all the way down to 0. It starts pretty high up. So we're not going to count in this case. We're going to just use points. And we're going to use points to find their slopes. So first let's go Joanne. So the 2 points for Joanne, if we look up here, are going to be 0 and 2,500. And then this one looks like it's at 5 and 2,750. So that means my slope is going to be 2,750 minus 2,500. And that's all over 5,000 minus 0. And the reason I'm saying 5,000 is because the 5 is represented as thousands of dollars. So while this point is 5 on the graph, in actuality, it's 5,000 and 2,750. Let's go back to our problem. Okay. When I do this subtraction, I get 250 over 5,000. And as a percentage, or as a fraction, that's 1 over 20. And it says percent commission. Okay, so 1/20th as a percent is going to be 5%. The way you can tell is it's 1 over 20, okay, which equals 5 over 100. Since percent is over 100, that's 5%. I'm going to do the same thing for Chris. Chris, if you look at his points, are 0, 1,500. And then we have another point here, and that is at 2,500 and 2,000. Go back and I'm going to use those 2 points here. So for my change in y values, I have 2,000 minus 1,500. dividing that by my change in x values, which is 2,500 minus 0. So that is 500 over 2,500, which is then 1/5. And when I simplify that as a percent, that's going to be 20 over 100, which is then 20%. So who earns a greater percent commission? Well, then that would be Chris, because Chris has a greater rate of change. Part C says to find each person's rate of commission. We kind of did part B and C together. So Joanne has a rate of 5%, and Chris has a rate of 20%. That means that Chris has the higher rate, or the greater rate. So in the real world, this is really important, because when you start looking for a job and say you want to go into sales, you want to look at things like your attributes. So if you're going to be like Chris, who earns lower money per month as a fixed salary, but he's a really good seller, then he wants a good commission rate. Otherwise, if you're like Joanne, maybe you're not a great seller, so you want a higher monthly income, because you know that your sales rate, you're not going to be making that much. So that's kind of the balance that you have to strike, and you really want to weigh those differences between the companies that you choose from. So that's an important aspect of doing this kind of work. This is the same type of problem as we just did. You're comparing these two graphs of total earnings between Joy and Zach. And when you're finished with this problem, get it checked by a teacher, and you'll be ready to move on to the last example. For our last example, we're comparing two different linear relationships given one graph and one equation. So we have Brittany and Scarlett, each have a coin bank. Brittany starts with a certain amount of money and adds money at regular intervals. Scarlett starts with a different amount of money and takes out money over time. The amount of money, Y dollars, in Scarlett's coin bank after X weeks is given by the equation Y equals negative 24X plus 120. The graph shows the amount of money in Brittany's coin bank after X weeks. So we have two different people, and we also have them represented in two different ways. One as an equation, and one as a graph. Okay, so this is all about Brittany, and so let's make it very clear to see Scarlett. So I'm going to take the the information that we get from the word problem, and that's Y equals negative 24X plus 120. And now let's start answering the questions. So, question A, find the vertical intercept of Brittany's graph and explain what information it gives about the situation. So here we're talking about Brittany. So we're going to be using the graph. The vertical intercept for the graph is 20. And that stands for money, and that's on weeks. So remember that a vertical intercept or y-intercept, okay, is when the x value is 0, or it's the starting point. You can think about that like when we're graphing in slope-intercept form. We start on the y-intercept. So you can think of that in a situation as starting in that situation. So for Brittany, this means that the vertical intercept is $20. And that means, well, let's go back and read the problem. It says that they each have a coin bank. Brittany starts with a certain amount of money and adds money at regular intervals. That means just that she starts with $20. For part B, we're asked to find the slope of Brittany's graph and explain what information it gives about the situation. So for this one, we have the 2 points, 0, 20, and we have the point 5, 120. And when I find the slope between those points, I'm doing 120 minus 20 over 5 minus 0, which is then 100 over 5, which is just 20. Okay, so what does that mean about the situation? Well, that means that for every week, right, so it's every 1 week, Brittany adds $20. Part C says, is Brittany adding money at a faster rate, or is Scarlett taking out money at a faster rate? So let's compare the rates of those two slopes. So for Brittany, the slope is 20. And for Scarlett, the slope is negative 24. So Scarlett is taking out $24 each time, and Brittany is putting in $20 each time. What they're asking for is which one is faster, not whether it's going up or down, but which one is faster. In this case, because you kind of think of absolute value here, and let's go back to the problem. Since the absolute value of negative 24 is greater than the absolute value of 20, that means that Scarlett is taking out money at a faster rate. And that's it for this lesson. Like I said previously, when you get that on your own problem checked by your teacher, and now you've done this example, you're ready for the practice problems.